reminder of what someone has not resolved within themselves. When this happens, the pain that stirs is not clearly recognized or understood. Instead of looking inward to discover the true source of discomfort, the human psyche often looks outward for someone to blame. It is far easier to project than to examine. So they begin to see you as the cause of their pain, not realizing that what hurts was already there. You become a target, not because you inflicted the wound, but because you activated its memory. This displacement of inner turmoil onto an external person is an unconscious defense, a way to avoid facing what feels unbearable. This process is subtle, almost invisible, which is why it often feels so confusing. The person who once welcomed your presence now withdraws or becomes cold. Their tone changes, their words grow sharp or distant, and you, not knowing the storm that has been stirred within them, are left in the dark. You may question your behavior, wonder what you said, or feel guilty for a pain you never meant to cause. But this guilt is misplaced because the wound was never yours to carry or heal. What makes this even more complex is that the person themselves may not understand what is happening. Their reaction may feel justified to them, even though it is deeply rooted in something they have not addressed. They might say they are annoyed by something trivial or blame you for a change they sense but cannot explain. But these surface complaints are often disguises for a deeper emotional struggle they are unwilling or unable to face. In their eyes, distancing from you becomes a way to return to emotional safety, even if that safety is built on avoidance. The tragedy of this dynamic is that it breaks connections silently and unnecessarily. Friendships dissolve, partnerships weaken, and family bonds stretch thin, not because of conscious conflict, but because of unspoken wounds erupting beneath the surface. No resolution is found because the true issue is never brought into the light. Both people suffer, one in confusion and hurt, the other in the silent weight of unresolved pain. Healing never comes where truth is hidden and understanding cannot grow where honesty is feared. Recognizing this can bring a strange kind of peace. It helps you understand that not every rejection is about your failure or flaw. Sometimes your very presence, your joy, your healing, your truth is enough to stir in others what they are not ready to face. This doesn't make you wrong, it simply makes you a mirror. And mirrors, while necessary for growth, are often avoided until one is truly ready to see. In this way, the tension you experience is not evidence of your harm, but of your light brushing against unseen pain. You are not responsible for wounds that are not yours. Your task is not to shrink yourself to avoid triggering others, but to walk with compassion and awareness. You can be gentle without being small, and kind without hiding your truth. Those who are willing to face themselves will one day understand, and those who are not may still walk away. But either way, your role is not to fix what was broken before you arrived. Your only responsibility is to remain whole, even when others cannot hold your wholeness without pain. People often form silent agreements in relationships, roles that are never discussed but deeply expected. You may become the one who always listens, always agrees, always stays. Without realizing it, you begin to occupy a space in someone else's narrative, not as who you truly are, but as the version of you that fits their needs. These roles are comfortable, predictable, and safe for them. They come to depend on your presence in that familiar shape, and it gives structure to how they see themselves and the relationship as a whole. However, as you grow and evolve, something within you begins to resist that mold. You start to recognize the places where you've made yourself smaller, quieter, or more convenient. You begin expressing new thoughts, setting boundaries, or simply pulling back where you once overextended. This shift, though necessary for your own well-being, unsettles the quiet expectations others have built around you. that you set back, and it disrupts the balance they've come to rely on, even if that balance was never fair to you. When you stop playing the role someone unconsciously assigned to you, they often react with confusion, frustration, or even resentment. They might not understand why you've changed, but they feel the loss of control. It's as if the story they were writing no longer makes sense, and rather than rewrite the story, they try to force you back into the character they created. This can feel suffocating, especially when your efforts to grow are met with accusations of selfishness or betrayal. These reactions are really about who you've become. They're about what your change represents. It reminds them that they too could choose differently, but haven't. It challenges the idea that the way things have always been is the only way they can be. And that confrontation, though subtle, can be deeply uncomfortable. People will often defend the familia, even when the familia no longer serves them. So your evolution becomes a threat, not by intention, but by implication. In the end, what you defend there's also a kind of grief that arises when someone loses the version of you they've come to depend on. Even if that version was never your true self, it still gave them comfort. Your departure from that role forces them to confront not just your change, but the instability of their own emotional framework. They may react with distance, anger, or even passive-aggressive behavior, not because they hate you, but because they don't know how to relate to this new version of you. This is one of the more painful parts of personal growth. You realize that evolving sometimes means leaving behind not just habits or beliefs, but also relationships that were built on who you used to be. And while it's tempting to shrink back into the old role just to keep the peace, doing so would mean abandoning yourself. You begin to understand that peace built on your silence is not real peace, and love that depends on your self-denial is not real love. In time, those who truly care for you will learn to see you as you are, not as they imagined you. They will grow to appreciate the depth and wholeness of your presence, even if it challenges them. And those who cannot will slowly fade away, caught in a story that no longer includes you. Let them go. Your task is not to play a part in someone else's script, but to live fully into your own truth, even if it means walking alone for a while. Every person carries within them a shadow, a part of the psyche made up of everything they reject, deny, or suppress about themselves. It includes emotions, traits, and desires that do not fit with the image they try to present to the world. These elements are not evil or shameful by nature, but they are often labeled that way by the person's upbringing, culture, or personal judgments. As a result, these aspects are pushed deep into the unconscious mind, where they wait, hidden yet very much alive, influencing thoughts and actions in ways the person is not fully aware of. When someone meets a person who embodies or expresses something they buried in their shadow, it creates a quiet but powerful tension. Without understanding why, they may feel uncomfortable in that person's presence. They might feel irritated, jealous, or even angry. These emotions seem unjustified, yet they persist. This is because the other person has triggered something internal and unresolved, a disowned part of themselves brought to light. What they are reacting to is not the person in front of them, but the mirror that person has become. You may be someone who speaks honestly, loves openly, sets clear boundaries, or lives with a kind of freedom that others have long denied themselves. To them, you become a walking contradiction to the story they've told about who they are and what is possible. They have spent years avoiding certain truths, and now your presence makes those truths harder to ignore. It is not that you have attacked them, it is simply that you have awakened something in them they were trying not to see. This awakening often feels threatening. Instead of curiosity or reflection, their reaction becomes defensive. They may start criticizing you, distancing themselves or labeling you as arrogant, selfish, or strange. These judgments serve as a defense mechanism, a way to push the discomfort back onto you so they don't have to examine what is happening inside themselves. The more authentic and grounded you are, the more disturbing your presence can be to someone who is not yet at peace with their own inner contradictions. This dynamic can be very painful if you don't understand what is taking place. You may begin to doubt yourself, question your worth, or feel guilt over the way others treat you. But once you see the deeper pattern, you understand that their reaction is not truly about you. You simply stepped into their unconscious field and lit up a corner they were not ready to explore. This does not make you wrong. It makes you someone who carries truth in a way that is difficult to ignore. The temptation might be to dim your light, to soften your truth, or to make yourself smaller so that others feel more comfortable. But doing so would mean betraying yourself in order to protect someone else's illusions. You cannot grow while keeping others safe from their own shadows. Growth always requires discomfort, and sometimes your role is not to soothe others, but to disturb the places where they've settled too deeply into avoidance. In time, those willing to face themselves will look back and recognize what your presence offered them, a chance to become more whole. But even if they never do, your responsibility remains the same. To live as truthfully and fully as you can. You are not here to carry the shadows of others. You are here to bring your light, even if it reveals what others would rather keep hidden. And in doing so, you serve not only your own soul, but the deeper healing of the collective. Human beings rarely see each other clearly. What we perceive in others is so often shaped by what we have not acknowledged in ourselves. In the deep layers of the unconscious, there exists a mechanism known as projection. It is the mind's way of unloading inner tension by assigning unwanted thoughts, feelings, or traits to someone else. This happens automatically, without intention or awareness. And when it does, a person becomes more than who they are. They become a vessel for another's unresolved conflicts. When someone projects onto you, they are not reacting to your actual words or actions. They are responding to something inside themselves that they cannot accept or understand. It could be anger they were never allowed to express, insecurity they've long denied, or desires they were taught to suppress. You may find yourself accused of things that feel completely untrue, or blamed for feelings that do not belong to you. This is not because of what you've done, but because you have become a screen upon which they cast their inner world. This silent process often begins subtly. A person might start to grow irritated by your confidence, dismiss your opinions, or challenge your intentions without clear cause. You might sense their discomfort but not understand it. Their reactions may feel out of proportion, even unfair. But in their mind, you are no longer just you. You are a symbol. You represent something they have not faced, and as long as that remains hidden, they will continue to misread and mistrust you. When your projection distorts reality, it breaks down communication and creates invisible barriers between people. Once projected upon, it becomes nearly impossible to have an honest connection with a person doing it. Everything you say is filtered through their inner confusion. Even your silence may be interpreted as judgment. Their mind, trying to protect itself, transforms you into a threat, and often you will have no idea what you triggered, only that you are being treated as if you are guilty of something unnamed. This experience can be deeply painful, especially when it comes from someone you care about. You may try to explain, to clarify, to defend yourself, but explanations rarely reach someone who is committed to their projection. They are not arguing with you, they are are arguing with a part of themselves they have refused to acknowledge. And until they become willing to look within, no amount of reasoning will free you from the role they've assigned you. It is important to understand that being the object of projection is not a reflection of your character, but a reflection of the other person's inner unrest. Your presence simply revealed a truth they were not ready to see. This does not mean you must carry their pain or correct their perception. It means you must stay grounded in your own truth, knowing that their reaction belongs to them, not to you. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is to walk away from a story you were never meant to be a part of. Over time, those who project may come to recognize the distortion, especially if life offers them the opportunity to turn inward. But even if they never do, you must remember your worth is not determined by someone else's inability to see clearly. Projection is a silent war, one you did not start and cannot resolve. Your role is to remain rooted in self-awareness, to refuse to become what someone else needs you to be for their own comfort, and to continue walking in the light of your own integrity. People often build mental images of those around them, not based on who they truly are, but on what they need them to be. These images are constructed unconsciously, shaped by personal desires, insecurities, and past experiences. Now, when you become aware of your inner past experience, when someone meets you, they begin to form an idea of you in their mind, an image that feels familiar, comfortable, and controllable. They may admire you for being gentle, dependable, agreeable, or always available. In reality, however, this image rarely captures your full complexity as a person. Over time, this illusion becomes their version of you, and they begin relating to that version rather than the real you. They might expect you to remain passive, to always say yes, to never confront or challenge them. As long as you fit into that mold, the relationship feels stable and predictable to them. But people grow, and with growth comes change. Change in behavior, values, and self-expression. At some point, you may begin to assert yourself more, to speak differently, to make choices that no longer align with their imagined version of you. This is where tension begins, when your real self starts to contradict the illusion they've held. They experience a sense of loss and betrayal, even if you've done nothing wrong. You are no longer reflecting back to them the image they clung to. You are now a reminder that the control they thought they had was an illusion, and that you were never theirs to define. They may begin to question your loyalty, your character, or even your intentions, not because you have changed in a harmful way, but because you have disrupted the narrative they were invested in. The reaction to this disruption can be subtle or severe. Some people withdraw emotionally, others become cold, critical, or distant. They may say things like, "You've changed," or "You're not who I thought you were," with an undertone of disappointment or blame. What they are really expressing is their discomfort in facing the truth that you were never their projection. And rather than confronting their own need to control or simplify you, they choose to reject the parts of you that don't fit. You may feel misunderstood or even punished for simply being yourself. It can be confusing to realize that authenticity, the very thing that should deepen connection, has created distance instead. But this is the paradox of human relationships. We often say we want honesty and depth, but when it challenges our comfort, we resist it. Your honesty has broken the image they relied on, and instead of embracing the truth, they cling to the illusion and turn away from you. This is not your fault. The illusion was never your responsibility to maintain. It was something they created, consciously or unconsciously, to satisfy an internal need. You are not here to be shaped by someone else's expectations. You are here to become your truer self, even if that means leaving behind relationships that were based on misunderstanding. The discomfort they feel is a reflection of their struggle, not a measure of your worth. With time and reflection, some may come to see and accept you more fully. They may let go of the illusion and choose to relate to the real person standing before them. Others may never be able to do so. Either way, your path remains the same: to continue growing, to remain honest, and to trust that those who are meant to walk with you will meet you where you truly are, not where they imagined you to be. Control is often an invisible thread running through many human relationships. People may not consciously seek to control others, but they find comfort in predictability, in knowing how someone will behave, respond, or react. When you follow the patterns they expect, it creates a sense of security. They believe they understand you, and in that understanding they feel a form of control. This control is rarely about dominance in an obvious way. It often shows up as expectations, assumptions, or emotional dependencies that quietly shape the dynamics between two people. When you begin to change, perhaps by setting boundaries, expressing new ideas, or acting in ways that are unfamiliar, you break that sense of control. You introduce uncertainty. The person no longer knows how to engage with you, how to predict your responses, or how to maintain the version of the relationship they relied upon. This can feel threatening to them, even if your changes are healthy or necessary. In their eyes, you've become unpredictable, and unpredictability often feels like a loss of power. This shift often evokes discomfort, fear, or even hostility. People might start challenging your decisions, questioning your motives, or accusing you of being difficult or distant. What's really happening is that your independence is disrupting the equilibrium they were used to. You're no longer as easy to define or influence, and they may not know how to relate to you without the framework they once depended on. The control they subtly held begins to slip, and for those who relied on it, that loss can feel deeply unsettling. They may attempt to reassert control, not always in overt ways, but through guilt, manipulation, or emotional withdrawal. These reactions are usually not rooted in malice, but in fear. They fear losing the connection, the closeness, or the version of you they once understood. Your growth reminds them that nothing in a relationship is guaranteed to stay the same, and that realization can stir a sense of vulnerability they may not be ready to face. Instead of adapting, they resist. Instead of accepting, they try to restore what once was. This resistance can be painful to witness, especially when it comes from people you care about. You may feel pressure to shrink back into the version of yourself they were more comfortable with, but doing so would mean denying your growth, your truth, and your evolving sense of self. It would mean abandoning your progress to protect someone else's illusion of control. And while that might bring temporary peace, it leads to long-term disconnection from who you truly are. Real connection cannot thrive where control exists. True relationships require the freedom for each person to grow, to shift, to challenge and be challenged without fear of rejection. When someone truly values you, they will learn to adapt to your changes, even if it takes time. They will not need to control you to feel safe. They will be curious about your transformation rather than threatened by it. And if they cannot, it may reveal more about their limitations than about your past. In the end, your journey is not about preserving someone else's comfort, but about honoring your own becoming. Challenging control is not an act of rebellion. It is an act of authenticity. It is the decision to be real, even when that reality unsettles others. Not everyone will welcome your freedom, but those who truly love you will learn to trust it. Let go of the need to be understood by those who only value the version of you they could manage. Stay true to the self that refuses to be confined. You embody the freedom they crave, and that can be deeply unsettling for those who have never allowed themselves to break free. When someone sees you living in a way that feels open, expressive, or authentic, it reminds them of all the places within themselves where they have stayed silent, small, or hidden. Your courage to be real touches something raw in them, a longing they may not even know they've suppressed. It's not not that they hate you for what you do. They hate the reminder of what they haven't done. There are many who carry deep desires for change, but who are paralyzed by fear, self-doubt, or obligation. They build lives around safety and control, choosing what is expected over what is true. When you step outside that pattern, it's as if you challenge the entire structure they've built. They begin to question not just your choices, but their own. And often, instead of examining that discomfort, they direct it toward you, casting you as reckless, selfish, or unrealistic. This dynamic isn't always loud or aggressive. Sometimes it's a subtle withdrawal, a coolness in their tone, or a passive resistance to your joy. They might downplay your achievements, dismiss your values, or avoid conversations that celebrate your growth. What's happening beneath the surface is a quiet war between admiration and envy. A part of them respects what you've done, but another part resents it because it highlights the parts of themselves they've left unexplored. You may find yourself confused by their reaction, especially if you once shared a close connection. It's painful to be resented for something you thought would inspire or uplift others, but this reaction isn't a reflection of your fault. It's a reflection of their internal conflict. Your freedom isn't the problem. The problem is the discomfort it awakens in someone who hasn't yet learned how to grant it to themselves. You simply serve as a reminder that it's possible to live differently. This is the silent tension that forms when someone feels bound by invisible chains and sees you walking unburdened. In their eyes, your life becomes a symbol of a road they didn't take, a voice they didn't use, or a truth they didn't follow. Instead of recognizing that freedom is available to them too, they distance themselves from you to quiet the unrest. This distance may feel like rejection, but it's often self-protection. They are shielding themselves from the discomfort of unfulfilled potential. Understanding this doesn't make the experience easier, but it brings clarity. It allows you to separate your identity from their reaction. You don't have to shrink to make others feel better about staying small. You don't need to apologize for choosing a life that aligns with your inner truth. In fact, your continued freedom may one day be the very thing that gives someone else the courage to reclaim their own. But that process is not yours to manage or wait for. Your task is to keep walking your path, to honor your choices, and to trust that those who are ready will eventually see you for what you are, a mirror, not a threat. Not everyone will celebrate your freedom, but that doesn't mean it isn't worth having. The more you embody what is real for you, the more space you create for others to do the same. And even if they turn away, you must remain faithful to the life that your soul has chosen, for that is the only life that will ever truly belong to you.